This was built in 1811 and called Fort Madison after James Madison, who was president. The story is that they fired a few cannon for honor to show that they at least tried, and then the soldiers fled upriver.
On September 1st, 1814, Reverend William Mason came rushing back to his house here in Castine. A British fleet had entered Castine Harbor, American soldiers had fled, and Reverend Mason was the only authority figure around. He grabbed a white tablecloth from his dining room and he raced down to the harbor to wave it as a flag of surrender. Canada, well, really Great Britain, had occupied or annexed Castine and the rest of eastern Maine.
I think it was, again, just a desirable place, and again, they knew it was not heavily defended, so it would have been it was very easy for the British to capture it.
The word annexation returned to the vocabulary of Canada-U.S. relations this year.
When you get rid of that artificially drawn line, somebody drew that line many years ago with like a ruler, just a straight line right across the top of the country.
You know, the idea that Canada would be a single state and that it would all join the U.S. and that somehow this is something that Canadians would embrace is not, you know, it's not based in a very clear historical understanding of those relationships.
If Canada was a state, it wouldn't cost us, it would be great. It would be such a great, it would be a cherished state.
In 1814, the shoe was on the other foot. The British, we, occupied this part of Maine. The goal was to create a new British colony called New Ireland. This would have been Canada's 11th province, and Penobscot Bay would have been the border between the Maritimes and the United States.
If the Canadian border had been here, I don't think a lot would have changed, because I think, when I look at Maine, I see us as a borderland between Canada and the United States anyway. I think there's a lot of understanding and acceptance and appreciation of the Canadians down here as well. And so, I mean, I think if this, you know, it would have just pushed all of that a little farther south, right?
In fact, Castine has been a border settlement 3 different times. In the 1600s, that over there was the British colony of Massachusetts, and this was the westernmost edge of the French colony of Acadia. Eventually, the French lost everything. In the 1770s, during the American Revolution, Loyalists came here to establish a new British colony where they could remain loyal to the Crown. They built this fort and even managed to chase a revolutionary fleet away.
Any reasonable person during the treaty negotiations at the end of the American Revolution would have said almost certainly the Penobscot River would be the border between British North America and the new United States.
But in 1783, the treaty recognizing American independence drew a new border down the St. Croix River, giving this territory to the U.S. About 400 Loyalists wanted to remain under the British Crown, so they left Castine and they settled what is now St. Andrews, New Brunswick, which may be why the two towns look a lot alike. When the British recaptured Castine in the War of 1812, they revived their plan to establish a new colony here. They even dug this defensive canal. But the treaty that ended the war gave eastern Maine back to the United States, again.
When I do walking tours, I jokingly tell people that, you know, this could have been Canada very easily. If the Treaty of Paris had been different, this would have been Canada. And I always joke and say, well, I would have had better health care.
In the 1840s, the U.S. built Fort Knox upriver from Castine in case of a new conflict. But eastern Maine never changed hands again. All the talk of occupation and annexation between the two countries died down, at least until recently.